So think about moving to Texas, and in particular maybe Houston? Well, in this video we are going to go over all the pros and cons of living in Houston, Texas. Stay tuned.
If this is the first time on our channel, we are real estate agents that specialize all over Texas. And if you're interested in learning about moving to Houston, Texas, well, today we have a treat for you because we're going to pass it over to one of our agents out in Houston, Lauren. So take it away, Lauren.
Today, we are going to be talking about everything you need to know about living in Houston, Texas. So let's get started. So Texas is huge. Houston is huge. Whenever you look at Houston, I mean, if you just put the Beltway, which is one of our highways that go around the city, or 99, it takes up a massive area. So Houston itself is within what they call the 610 loop, and that is our inside loop. So whenever they talk about the loop, they are talking about 610, and that is where you are going to find downtown. But once you go outside of that, the next big loop that you have around is going to be the Beltway, and after that you have 99, which is almost a full loop, but it cuts off at the Gulf in both spots, so it kind of has a little break there where you don't go over the water. But it's a massive area. It goes almost all the way up to the Woodlands. If you don't know what the Woodlands is, it's actually one of the top place right now to live according to Niche in the US. So not only do you have Houston as a whole, but you have all these fantastic suburbs that go all the way around it. All right, so what about affordability? Is Houston affordable? Well, out of the top biggest cities in the US, Houston is number 2. We are actually 6.2% below the national average in terms of cost of living, which is great because not only do you have a lower cost of living than most of the bigger areas, but we have a ton of job opportunities. So what does that look like in homes? Right now, the average home in Texas is $380,000. Now, that can definitely vary depending on where you are. If you are looking specifically maybe at, East Downtown, also known as Edo, you're gonna probably pay a little bit more. If you are looking in areas, that are further north, like Conroe, you might pay a little bit less. It just depends what it is and the area that you are interested in. So if you compare that $380,000 to say like California's national average, we are $200,000 less because right now the average cost of a single family home in California is over $588,000. So you get a lot more house for your money, and the overall cost of living is much lower because between the jobs and the houses, it's a very, very win-win situation. While we were on the topic of jobs and job opportunity, Houston is huge for that. We have the Texas Medical Center, which is the biggest medical center in the world, which leads a lot of business in terms of job opportunity as well as income for the medical field and the associated fields. So that includes things like technology. We have over 500 technology companies that are right here in Houston. We also are number 3 for having the Fortune 500 companies in the city. So, there's no shortage of work. Our biggest, people are, Exxon, we have HEB, which is huge. We have Walmart that is a huge employment option, as well as several hospitals that top the list for over 20,000 employees. So there is no shortage of work. And with so many companies still moving here because Texas does not have state income tax, you definitely have a lot of choices no matter where you are. We also have a huge entertainment sector, which opens up all those jobs regarding that. So, there's a lot of opportunity as a whole. So Houston is a huge city. It is very, very diverse. And one of my favorite things about the area is the food. The level of diversity that we have from people all over the world has really brought in a great cuisine, and so you can find whatever you want to eat in the area. Now, there are of course great things about Houston, and just like every other city, we definitely have our downfalls too. In terms of weather, which is one of my most asked questions, it's hot. It's as hot as everybody says that it is. That is no rumor. As we say down in here in Houston, it's not the heat, it's the humidity. And especially during those summer months, whenever you have all of those Gulf Coast systems coming up, it just brings in that hot, muggy air. So what we do to combat that is we have a lot of cool indoor spaces, but we also have a lot of water, and we love spending time there because obviously it's a great way to cool down when you're hot. So a lot of places have pools. We definitely have a lot of lakes, rivers, and of course we have beaches. In terms of beaches, you are not going to find, the beautiful beaches like you find in Destin, Florida, or, some other locations, but we do have some nice ones as well. Whenever people say that they're going to the beach, they are talking about Galveston, but we also have Padre Island, and the closer that you get to Mexico and the Caribbean, the prettier the water gets. Galveston in particular tends to be kind of brown most of the year, and the reason for that is that we get all the, Mississippi goes into the Gulf of Mexico, and all that silt and dirt gets released. So that is definitely part of why Galveston is not as blue as you would find in places like Florida. So when you talk about the weather, obviously we have to talk about the bugs. We definitely have a lot of mosquitoes, so find a good insect repellent that you like because there's definitely a lot of fun things to do outside. But with that, you also get a lot of other large bugs because we are considered a subtropical climate, which hence that humidity, but you also get some other things like spiders and certain snakes. Hopefully you won't find a lot of those, especially in the well-populated areas, but you certainly will definitely have spiders, mosquitoes, wood roaches. They are usually in trees, but they definitely will fly through an open door every now and then, so it's certainly something to be aware of and not completely freak out. They don't like being inside, but they are big, and they fly. Super fun. So I know my kids think that they're hilarious. I do not, but to each their own, so the bugs are certainly a thing with the heat and the humidity. Hurricanes are another huge thing that I get questions about all the time. So let's talk about hurricanes. We definitely get them. They are definitely something that we start to watch in June. Most of the time they don't hit until August and September. The bigger ones are usually right in there. September is kind of our month if we're gonna have a really bad one. But I can tell you that as a whole, yes, hurricanes do damage, but it definitely depends on where you live. So I know that a lot of people are concerned about flooding, but there are a lot of places that are very, very safe in terms of flood risk. We do get a lot of flooding on the highways and a lot of flooding by the bayous, but most of that is going to be commercial or industrial zone. So it's not something that most people have to worry about on a personal level regularly. It's the drainage and everything is constantly being addressed and is constantly changing based on obviously the amount of concrete that is on the ground, because it changes the way that things drain if there's nothing for that water to seep into. But whenever you start looking at different areas, we have really, really great flood maps that really lay out your risk factor depending on where you want to live. I personally live in Montgomery, and Montgomery is higher up than a lot of the other places in Houston. It's pretty far north. It's up on Lake Conroe. So our personal risk in Montgomery is very, very low. There are certain places that are much more at risk, but once you get a realtor, hopefully me, we can definitely walk you through that to make sure that you are finding a home that you want and in a spot that is safe for you. That being said, make sure that if you do move here, follow that rule of turn around, don't drown, because based on the way that our freeways are made, you really can't tell how deep that water is. And in certain places, it can get really, really deep, up to 10 feet deep. And so you don't want to, drive into water without being aware of what you're doing. You definitely know all about the hot weather here, but what about the cold weather? We don't get very much of it. I would say a good solid 8 months of the year. It's pretty warm and favorable temperatures for maybe half of that. June, July, and August are brutal, but the other months can be relatively temperate depending on the humidity level. If you really enjoy skiing, with the size of Texas, it takes a while to get to ski slopes, but you definitely have ice storms, usually about once a year. So what does that look like here? There are definitely rumors that Texans don't know how to drive in the ice. I would say that's mostly true, but the bigger part of that is definitely going to be our ability to handle the ice. Houston is covered with all these roadways that have a lot of bridges to make room for underpasses and the feeder roads. That's another Houston thing. Feeders are also called access roads, but everybody here refers to them as a feeder. So good information to know. But they freeze over and we just don't have the equipment to handle the freeze. I know that one time my husband, we lived out on Lake Conroe, and the only way to get into our neighborhood was over one bridge or the other, and he was gonna leave anyway. Got there and there was a guy on the back of a pickup truck and he was throwing salt out the back. So needless to say, he did not go to work that day. So on those ice days, it's always best to just stay home. A lot of companies shut down, schools usually shut down. And although everybody has heard about our nice little power grid outage this last winter, that is not very normal. That is not the standard. So we actually usually are more concerned about losing electricity with hurricanes than ice storms. That was just an unfortunate situation that hopefully is under control and will never happen again. Now, while we are talking about freeways, that is another funny thing about this area. The freeways, a lot of them have a lot of different names. So whenever you talk about 45, it's 45, but whenever you get to the south side, it's called the Gulf Freeway. You have I-10, which is also the Katy Freeway. On one side, you have the Beltway, which is also called Beltway 8. And you have the 610 Loop, which is called the Loop, South Loop, East Loop, North Loop, West Loop, depending on where you are. And this goes on, it's kind of an ongoing joke about the different names for the roads. So 59 is also 69. I mean, it just goes on. So that's definitely something that's important to know, especially if you want to be able to get around efficiently and whenever you're talking to people from the area, because different people are going to use different terms, and it's always nice to kind of know what they're talking about. All right, now I was actually working with some clients the other day, and they were talking to me about some things that they wanted to do, and I asked them if they had ever heard of the Houston Rodeo, and they said no, and it was almost shocking to me. But the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is the big event in Houston. Of course, we also love our sporting events, especially the Astros, but the Houston Rodeo is massive, and it's not the kind of rodeo that you would think in a traditional sense. The Houston Rodeo brings in the top artists from all around the United States and a couple from Mexico for Go Tejano Day, and they have all these fantastic concerts with the rodeo right before. They also have the livestock show, and as well as tons of shopping, lots of different kinds of food, wine gardens, art shows. They have it all, and they have the carnival and the cook-off. It's all just kind of this big melting pot of people, and you just really get to enjoy this great all-around culture that is really, really unique to Houston. All right, so let's talk about some of the fun odds and ends about Texas that you might not hear everywhere else. For one, homecoming for us is huge. You see a lot of high school football games. It's a big deal around here. That is certainly no rumor. With those, people wear mums, and they are not what you think. So if you want to know more about mums, look it up, because there are plenty of funny memes making fun of the size that some of them get. And although a lot of the memes are a little extreme, they are not as extreme as you would think. It's a big deal, everybody wears them, and whenever you get to seniors, it's usually a triple, and they get so heavy that you wear like a thing around, like a rope around it, because you can't actually pin it to your shirt, they get so heavy. So that is certainly true. The next funny is there are certain towns that, you know, if you pronounce them wrong, everybody's gonna know that you aren't from around here and you start getting questions. So one of them is gonna be Kirkendall. And Kirkendall looks weird. It's because we had a huge German settlement in that area and that's where it derived from, but it is pronounced Kirkendall. The next one is going to be Humble, which is a suburb in northeast Houston, to the east side of 45, and it is spelled with the H, but it is pronounced Humble. The next one is Y'all. Yes, we all say it. It is part of our daily vocabulary. It's just easier than saying you guys or you all. We also say all y'all, which is a good one. It's talking about a bigger group of people. And another good one is bless your heart. That is not a compliment. It's usually a snub, more about like poor them. So if you hear somebody say, oh, bless your heart or bless their heart, it's not a nice thing. Just one of those fun things to be aware of before you move here. The next one is gonna be manners. People are serious about manners, especially once you start getting to the suburbs. And if you hear kids say yes ma'am, or you know, they are not, it's not a reflection on your age, it's just simply a form of respect for their elders and in terms of being polite. On the roads, it's no different. People drive really fast, and if you cut somebody off, I highly suggest rolling down your window and waving real big out the window, or people get real grumpy about it because they just think you're rude, and that's kind of what sets off all sorts of possible other issues. So, you know, whenever you're driving around those suburbs, you're gonna have people wave at you, you know, just wave off the top of the steering wheel, because otherwise you're gonna get weird looks. It's just standard in Texas. People really take kindness and politeness, especially in the suburbs, very seriously, and it can certainly be a point that people get a little offended if not. Otherwise, as a whole, the people in Houston are incredibly accepting. Overall, they're wonderful. You can find a place for any family and any type of person where you will be accepted and happy just how you are, which is one of my very favorite things about this city. If you are looking at inner Houston, there are actually over 90 languages spoken in the area. So that just really shows the level of diversity that makes Houston so special.
Thanks, Lauren, for that great information. Now, if you're thinking about moving to Texas anywhere, whether it's Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that bell, so you're alerted every time we do a video. And don't forget to give us a call, text, email, however it is that you want to get a hold of us. We've got your back when it comes to moving to Texas. Until next time, I'm Andy. Take care.